Okay. So this is the third session, and you'll see there's been a bit of a change, right? We went from being basically 3 old white guys, 4 if you include me, right, to basically 2 younger white guys and a person who, as Peter quite rightly says, I've never met a person that is more genuine and has a desire not to be engaged in conflict. So I've often thought it would be great to try and provoke her into an argument, but I haven't quite worked out how I could quite do that. So we've moved now to the younger generation, and this is the generation that has graduated relatively recently. And you might think, well, it's going to take me a long time to actually achieve some position of influence. And let me tell you this, if you're coming out of the MRE program, you're coming out of the MLPD program, you have been deliberately set up with curriculums that have given you core knowledge and core competencies that allow you to be productive right from day one. And that's no accident. I mean, this didn't just happen because you just wandered in and it just... I mean, Sydney Donnell put a huge amount of work into turning that program into something that had substance. And I can tell you, I poured my heart and soul into creating the MLPD program into something that was well aligned with what the industry was looking for. And as a consequence, when our graduates go out, they make a difference. And I've never had any response from any of the people that have employed our graduates that they're disappointed with what they got. And so I'm very proud of, particularly of these 3, and not just these 3, but many others that have graduated, but these 3 are exemplary of what we actually produce here in Texas A&M. And the first one was Yi. She was a landscape architect. She came, she said, look, I'd like to do the MLPD program. Do you think it'd be interesting for me? I said, absolutely. I'd met this Chinese woman when I was in ULI, and this, what was her name? Madam, whatever her name was. Anyhow, she's buku rich. She owns billions of dollars of real estate in China. And I said, I reckon you'll probably do better than she will. And I still reckon that's the case. There was not an opportunity that I gave E that she did not grab with open arms. She was my graduate assistant. I tasked her to go and meet with Jonathan and basically sound him out on what was the sensory value that was created in real estate. And she went and did about a half-hour interview. It was the first in our series of AGGIE to AGGIEs. It's online if any of you actually want to go and see it. Probably one of the best articulations in terms of how real estate value is created in a way that we use our 5 senses to appreciate it and then reward it with repeat visitation. She went to work for Caldwell's. There was some consternation. She was from China. She wasn't an American citizen. Were Caldwell's actually going to take the punt on this? And to their credit, they did. They've invested in her. And I think that investment has come back in spades. Second person here is Robert Fox. He was a major in the United States Marine Corps. Captain? They kicked me out for that. He was a general, right? Yeah, they didn't know how good he was, right? So he came, he excelled in the program. It was pretty clear that he was going to do some pretty outstanding work. When I asked him to come back and speak, I said to him, mate, you got to keep it to 15 minutes, right? The running joke was that he was instrumental in defeating the Taliban in Afghanistan, not with ammunition, but with PowerPoint. So I think he sort of talked him into submission. And when I asked him to come today, he said, can I bring my mum and dad? And I said, and there's mum and dad sitting right there. Put your hands up, mum and dad, right? And I said, yeah, mate, we would love to meet him. So he's brought his mum and dad today. So you're in for a treat. Robert is about to leave the United States. He's going to start his own home building operation with another AGGIE that we've had a long association with in South Africa. And I'll let him tell you a little bit about that in his own address. And then finally, Riddhi. Riddhi came here from India. She's an architect, graduated from Mumbai University, I think, and very poised individual. Felt a little bit challenged, I think, but sort of isolated when she first came, like most of us do. And she persevered, and there was not a time when if Riddhi had a question, she wouldn't come and she would ask that question. You're going to get, I think, quite an interesting presentation from her today, because her path was a little different. Instead of going into land development or architecture, she went into the capital markets. So she's chosen a different path. She's carving out a different sort of direction. So I think between the three of them, you're going to see basically the next generation of leaders that we're producing here at Texas A&M. And I, for one, are very proud of what we've produced. So please welcome E to come.
Howdy. Howdy. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to come back. And my name is Yi Xue. I graduated from Texas A&M University in 2014 with 2 master's degrees, one in landscape architecture, one in land property development. And I've been working at Caldwell for 5 years since graduation. And my home was in China, so Caldwell is like my second family. And Fred and Peter are like my dads, always kind, sometimes tough. And I see many Caldwell people here, and I feel the support from my family. When I saw the subject today, Vision 2020, and I saw the panelists, we have 3 tiers of leaders today. And I think maybe my value on the panel is that I'm 5 years into my career, and I'm very similar age with most of you. I'm probably a few years older. And I still remember all the struggles, confusion, and doubts that I had when I was in graduate school. So I think maybe the best way that I can help is to share the lessons learned from my graduate school to the first few years of my career. When I was in graduate school, like many young people, I also had that fast success mindset. I was eager to prove myself and looking for that efficient route to get to success. Now when I look back, I really wish I had a more long-term view of my career. What do I mean by that? If you think about it, most of us have 45 years or more in our career life. It's really more like a marathon than a sprint. If we divide this marathon into 3 stages, the first stage, we accumulate career fuel for this long journey ahead and trying to find our sweet spot. And in stage 2, we know what our sweet spot is, so it's really time to take advantage of it, differentiate ourselves, and reach high. And when we are in the 3rd stage, we really know what our purpose is, and we know what are most meaningful to us. So it's time to go far, make an impact, and leave a legacy. We already had our stage 2 and stage 3 leaders who have shared their wisdom with us. And I'm like most of you, we are all in stage 1. We're still laying the foundation for our career. But you know what? It's actually the most important or critical stage in the in your entire career. It's the foundation. And so there are 2 major tasks in this stage. First one is to accumulate career fuel. Because it's a marathon, it's a long journey, right? You want to have abundant career fuel for you to get through the journey, to finish this marathon. You don't want to lose your momentum halfway through when it's supposed to get the most interesting and rewarding. And the career field can come in different formats. Skills. It's time to build your expertise. When I talk about skills, it's not just the specific technical knowledge and skills that are specific to your major. It's also those transferable skills that you can carry with you throughout your career, that you can bring with you, from job to job, from company to company, even from industry to industry. Different people probably have different ranking for skills. My top 3 are number 1, problem-solving skill. I haven't worked on one real estate development project that we don't have any problem to solve. So train yourself to be a robust problem solver. And second, critical thinking. Are you in the habit of questioning every step of your thinking and challenge the assumptions that were given to you? Are your decisions based on rational and logical reasons? And third skill I want to mention is communication skill, like many the senior leaders already mentioned. Dale Carnegie once said, quality of your life is quality of your communication. That is just how critical communication skill is. So train yourself to articulate your ideas and express yourself clearly. Second field I want to talk about is experiences. My suggestion on this is to be open to new experiences and challenges that will take you outside your comfort zone and grow your career muscle. Take myself as an example. I have a very diverse background. I literally changed industry several times. My bachelor's degree was in ornamental horticulture. And my first job after graduation was doing planting design and writing design documents for a planning and design firm in China. And then I came to United States, got a master in landscape architecture and a master in land and property development. Even my experience at Caldwell is very diverse too. I started my role by preparing offering memorandums to secure financing for our projects. And then I spent a lot of time on conducting financial analysis. And then I got more involved into studying market trends, doing market research, and now also assume some project management responsibilities. Sounds like I'm doing a lot of different things, but when I look back, the story makes perfect sense because none of my prior experience got wasted, and each added to my skill set and toolbox that I can use every day. So my suggestion is to go try different things, try different environments, and try different ways of doing things. I think the benefit of doing that is your career will not be fragile. You will be adaptable and agile, and you'll be ready for any business situation and problem that come in your way. Third career field is relationships. You probably heard many people talking about your connections are one of your most important assets. Your classmates today can be your best friend or your business partner 10 years, 20 years into your future. And your professor today can be your mentor many years beyond graduation. Another point I want to make on relationships is your reputation is your most important asset. So guard it well. My dad repeatedly told me about a metaphor which helped me put this into perspective. So envision a pool. Every positive interaction we have with someone is a clear drop of water. And every negative interaction we have with the same person is a black drop of water. So you can imagine you will need a number of clear drops to dilute this one black drop. And some people are more forgiving than others. For those that are less forgiving, it'll take a lot more to wash away that black. So I think it's a really good reminder of the importance of every experience we have with others, no matter whether they're our family, friends, classmates, professor, co-workers, or business connections. Last field I want to talk about is establish good early work habits. On this one topic, I can talk for hours, but we don't have that kind of time. So I'll just mention one that I find especially important, which is very simple: get things done. Sounds pretty basic, right? But getting things done with high quality consistently is not easy. And not many people can do that. So if you are in the habit of this, it's of immense value to your career. Another major point I want to make, another major task in our stage 1 is to find your sweet spot. Your sweet spot is the intersection of what you love, what you are good at, and what the world appreciates. It's very important, but it's not an easy task. It takes time and takes a lot of experimentation. So I think being too set on a specific career path too early on is not necessarily a good thing. It can be efficient, but it can also be sadly limiting, because the career goal or career path that you see right now is only one of a million possibilities. So my suggestion on this is to give yourself permission and allow yourself time to find out what you love, what you hate, what you're good at, and what you're bad at. And this process takes time, but it's not like passively waiting for that inspirational strike moment. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This process is highly active and purposeful. To end my speech, I want to share a quote from Mark Moody Stewart with you. A career is never a straight upward sloping line. Often we need to go backwards to go forwards, to get worse to get better, to invest to progress. The best journeys are those that we got lost. Thank you.
Nice job. All right. You guys are lucky. My dog has heard me give this speech about 20 times. You only have to hear it the one time. Seriously. It's simultaneously a huge honor and honestly spectacularly terrifying to be asked to speak alongside these men and women. I mean, every one of them has more insight in their little pinky than I've got in my entire body. And, you know, I really just want to start out by saying, you know, this is 2020. This is a new decade. It's our decade. It's our 20s. That's kind of crazy. And it's the vision of, or it's the decade of perfect vision, the year of perfect vision, not clear or focused vision, perfect. And that word carries a little bit of weight. How do we even hope to approach that standard? And so, you know, the answer is actually fairly simple, and it's hindsight. For those of you in the audience without foresight, hindsight also happens to be 2020. And I apologize for that joke. But I had to. It fit the theme so well. What I'm going to do is a little bit different. I'm going to give y'all a rapid fire barrage of some of the most thought-provoking development design ideas that I've come across in my fairly short career so far. Think of this as like a lightning round. It's basically just meant to spur some ideas and some imagination for you guys as we move forward into this next decade. And so really the last thing I want to say before I start that is that we all stand on the shoulders of giants that step into the arena day after day, full of ideas, full of resolve, and often they fail spectacularly. We all fail spectacularly. Hindsight's a gift that they give to us. It comes to them at dear cost, but it's given to us freely. And so it's okay to play armchair quarterback, and it's okay to make fun after the game. It's actually kind of fun to do that. But you can only do that if you're willing to step into the arena yourself the next week and bloody your own damn nose out there on the field. And so that's my challenge to y'all in 2020. Is to learn from these giants that I'm about to introduce you to, and the ones that you've heard from today, and Riddhi, who you're going to hear from after me, and take those lessons to heart and move forward in the right direction for 2020. So the first idea is number one, the transect, Ian McHarg. So the transect is a pretty simple concept, but it's very profound. Imagine yourself in Surfside, Texas. It's a warm, sunny day. You're walking up through the surf, past the minnows, over the beach, past all the fiddler crabs. You go over the crossover, and you pass the dune. It makes a fantastic windbreak for your beach house barbecue pit. Once you get past the rows of beach houses, you get through the salt grass and the mud flats, and you drop into Drum Bay with the speckled trout and the redfish and the friggin' hardheads, right? That's a transect. Multiple unique zones with absolutely unique flora, fauna, mineral profiles, soil profiles, things of that nature. And ecologists have been using the concept of the transect for over 200 years to describe the relationships between all those different organisms and microclimates and things of that nature. Scottish landscape architect Ian McHarg was the first that really pushed us as designers and developers to take hold of that concept and apply it to the built world. And so for the first time, ecologists, environmentalists, and builders were able to speak with the same language. It's a monumental achievement. I'm going to play off it. Sorry, that's just a really pretty picture. I'm not going to use it, but I'm going to play off the transect a couple more times here. The urban to rural transect, or excuse me, the rural to urban transect, really is kind of the first permutation of the transect that I've taken to heart. The new urbanists, Andreas Dwani, Elizabeth Platter-Zyberg, Brian Falk, they really took Ian McHarg up on his challenge. They began to apply the transect to the built environment. And so what we get are these zones. Usually see it from T1 to T6, T7 is special districts, but they describe the relative ruralism or urbanity of a place. And so they allow us to identify appropriate development intensities, and then within those intensities we can assign design details that evoke those rural or urban characteristics. And so, again, a very elegant tool. It basically allows us to balance the natural world with the man-made world, which, as Jonathan said earlier, it's something that's become increasingly important as we move forward. The next permutation of the transect is the vernacular classical transect. I'm going to give Steve Mouzon of Mouzon Design credit here. He's really the one that's reminded us that, as you move in from the country to the urban core, buildings tend to move from a more relaxed vernacular form or folk forms to a more refined classical form, like what you'd see from Vitruvius or something like that. And so, just like people, buildings get dressed up when they go to town, right? It took me a while to figure out where 12 Monkeys Brad Pitt belonged in this spectrum. But, jokes aside, it's important. It's a very important design concept because what it allows us to do is add authenticity to our projects. As you think about the spectrum of the transect from the urban core to the country, you can assign these folk or relaxed forms like your 1920s bungalows or whatever, and then also you can think about civic architecture like your churches. This concept that buildings get dressed up when they go to town, that's as true of one-horse towns as it is of metropolises. The former may just have that one church with the nice columns or whatever, but they're there. So start looking for them. Idea number 4, and this is my last transect, I promise, the private-public transect. A ton of us have fallen in love with Ross Chapin's book on pocket neighborhoods. These are basically, it's a classical development form. You used to see it. John Nolan designed these back prior to World War II. But they're clusters of homes or apartments that surround a common space, a common green. And they're fantastic at doing one thing, providing a sense of community, creating a sense of community. You can see that right there. I mean, who wouldn't want to sit out there and have a cup of coffee on that porch, watch the kids play? The problem with them is that your neighbors basically end up right on top of each other, right? There's very small side setbacks and things of that nature. And so Chapin and the designers of old that were doing these had a very particular problem that's really instructive, or should be instructive to us. And that's, how do you balance a sense of community with a sense of privacy? And so if you can imagine our final transect today, pulled from the center of that common green up to your living room, you've got a space in that green that's 100% public space. It's meant to be littered with kids' toys and spur debate over pet waste, right? But as you get across the sidewalk, you start encountering these different layers of boundaries that lend your project, additional levels of privacy without stamping out that sense of community. So you see you've got a 3-foot fence. You've got the shrubbery, you may have some dwarf trees. You've got an elevated crow's nest position with the porch, rails, balusters, the furniture, the front door, and eventually a shower curtain, right? Just kidding. Nobody's ever seen Psycho here, huh? So, although, justifiably, we may want to put 50-foot setbacks or walls or even prison bars between us and our neighbors, there are other ways to accomplish earning a level of privacy or building a level of privacy into our projects without doing so. So we need to start thinking about that as we move forward. Idea number 5, no-go, slow-go, and go-go. It's a really, it's a simple concept, but again, these are all fairly profound, obviously. So this one's an AGGIE's concept. This is Dr. Chris Mulder, who got his landscape architecture doctorate here, began it in 1978. He went back to South Africa. He was a former farmer and established, a world-class design and development firm. It's fantastic work. What you see there is the master plan for the Crossways Farm Village. And so what this idea means basically is that, once we've figured out how to design a project, we have to figure out where to build it. And Chris does this by using a technique that he calls sieve analysis. And he takes a master plan like that and begins to overlay all the critical information, hydrology, geotechnical information, soil profiles, vegetation, etc. And in so doing, he identifies 3 different types of land. No-go land is left to be preserved. It's, think of it as your old growth forests or your wetlands and riparian areas, maybe historic sites. That's land that does not need to be touched. And what it offers your project is enduring value, because that is an irreplaceable amenity that cannot be replicated by any of your competition. The second category, slow go, might be your prime farmland or critical view sheds, and that should be held as a development reserve. If you need to develop it, if it's absolutely vital to the success of the project, okay, maybe you can tap into it. But really, it should be put to a more low-intensity use, and in this project, that would be agriculture. And then finally, once you're done harvesting your pearls, then you can start looking at where are the places that really are begging for human habitation. And those are what we call go-go areas, right? And they can be built to whatever intensity the context demands. Dr. Mulder's particular genius is that he's able to harvest sufficient premiums on the land values on that third category of land in order to preserve the other 2. And you can see that in the skeleton of his land plan there. So if we're, again, talking about the flooding in Houston, or if we're talking about just general climate change concerns, this is a great way to start looking at how we can conserve our land. He's really doing it through a mix of uses and a mix of housing types, which grants his projects natural affordability. I'm going to skip past 6 and 7 because it'll take me an hour to get through them. You're welcome. Idea number 8, I timed myself last night, so idea number 8 is the pedestrian shed. We've got the new urbanists back here. Again, we've got Andres Duany, Elizabeth Platter-Zyberk, etc. This is another concept that we see everywhere. I mean, Midway, is another. I keep using them as an example, but City Center, in Century Square, wouldn't exist without this concept. Think of neighborhoods as the basic building blocks, the smallest divisible component of a city, where you've got all the fundamental components. You can strip a neighborhood apart into blocks or corridors, buildings, but if you do that, you lose some of the essential uses, the retail, the office space, the industrial, the pocket parks, things of that nature. You don't really have anything left. So it's kind of like an atom. You can isolate the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons, but you've got no chemical element at the end of the day. So if we see that cities are basically just tapestries of neighborhoods that are sewn together with corridors, then it's pretty easy to argue from that every neighborhood should be self-sustaining. We should be able to get all of our basic goods and services that we need in a given week to survive within our neighborhood. Why not? I mean, if the component DNA is flawed, then you can bet that the whole's in trouble, right? And so, the next thing that I would say is that from there, as a culture, we honor our elders, we cherish our children, and we defend the defenseless. And so it's pretty easy for me to argue from that point that our neighborhoods, not only should they, self-sustain, but they should be universally accessible to the young, to the elderly, and the handicapped. And so we're kind of left when we begin our land planning with a problem, or with two options, really. The first option is to punish our grandparents who can't drive for their failing eyesight and make them walk 20 minutes to go get their milk and eggs, which, the average healthy human or healthy adult takes about 20 minutes to make that happen, right? That's one option. The second option is to start your land planning by taking your map and drawing circles that have a 1/4 mile radius, and all those essential goods and services are placed as close to the center of that circle as possible. That way you've got an average 5-minute walk to get all your basic goods and services. That should be the first thing that you do on your site plan before you start going. Unless you hate the elderly. It's up to you. I figured you'd like that one. Yeah. All right, number 9, light imprint. I'll go a little faster on this one. So now that we've designed our site, we figured out how to design, and we've figured out where it goes, we can start doing some value engineering. Light imprint and that's really hard to see, I apologize, but you can see the lines there, which is your stormwater pipe. That's what you really need to see. Light imprint's just a civil engineering methodology, and basically it's a way that we can utilize natural drainage and infiltration techniques, natural channeling, alongside more conventional pipe and pond infrastructure, and basically create projects that lie lighter on the land. So they're less infrastructure intensive and hopefully a little bit cheaper. Tom Lowe is the giant that I'm giving credit for this idea. He wrote a book called The Light Imprint Handbook, where he categorized a bunch of these techniques like bioretention swales and rain gardens and things like that, pervious paving. He categorized them along that urban-rural transect, and then he began implementing them. This project that you can barely see up here is Griffin Park in Greensboro, South Carolina. And what they did with this project was they basically went through full conventional engineering up to the point that they got their opinions of probable cost. And once they figured out what that was going to cost, they started value engineering, and they applied a light imprint overlay. They went back to a traditional street classification, which led them to cut 2 feet off of the widths of all their pavement sections. They went to their service alleys that had lighter traffic. They took out the asphalt, and they put in crushed stone, which is pervious instead of the impervious layer. Along all the local streets, they took out as much conventional piping and curb inlets as they could, and in place of that, they put bioretention swales, which are really a natural amenity. They're gorgeous. And then in place of the monolithic detention ponds, which we all know and love, they got rid of that and built a number where you can barely see some of the green that's up there, but a number of rain gardens and filtration basins throughout the project. At the end of the day, they were able to cut their finished lot costs by 31% by making those changes. You can't do it everywhere, and I can tell you from my experience in San Antonio, most of you engineers are going to look at you like you're insane if you try and get them to do it. But if you push hard enough, you can get 2 or 3 of these strategies into your projects and save some money while doing some good. Ideas 10 and 11, living traditions in the original green. Steve Mouzon's back on here. You can tell he's a hero of mine. Before we had Energy Star air conditioning systems, and before we had building envelopes that were tight enough that we could probably send them to the moon, we had to grapple with Mother Nature using more tried and true common sense building methods that really have been passed down from generation to generation. Steve calls the collection of those the original green, and each one of them is a living tradition. And you know most of these intuitively. You can see on this house, kind of, sort of, this deep front porch. A deep front porch on a sunny southern exposure helps us eliminate some of the solar gain inside the home, right? And we open windows on opposite walls, and we open clear story windows near the ceiling to pull cross and chimney ventilation in our projects. We paint our shutters pink in the Bahamas, like you can see here, because that's what we do in the Bahamas, I guess. I don't know. It's what they do. Someone's going to have to explain that to me. But that's a living tradition. And what's interesting about that is I can tell that this kind of low country style home is in the Bahamas and not in the southeastern United States, because all good Georgians and South Carolinians know that we paint our porch ceilings light blue. Anybody ever seen that before? See it all over the place. There's a project in Bryan, actually, downtown, that's got that as well. And, why do we do that? Well, I think common wisdom is that it discourages spider webs, cobwebs, insects. They mistake it for the sky or whatever it is, right? But really, as you do your research on that, what you find out is that blue is actually meant to scare away haints and boohags. Yeah. The gullas of the low country use that blue because haints and boohags, as we all know, have a fear for water. So if you don't believe me, go walk around the older parts of Atlanta, the Chattahoochee foothills, and see how much blue window trim and blue ceilings you find. Those are living traditions. I didn't say they were all pragmatic, but the ones that are pragmatic really do help us conserve electricity. They're common sense solutions to problems that are not just modern problems, they're universal problems. And what they can do for us today is they can take some of the effort off of Alexa's climate control system, right? If we do things right in the first place. Idea number 12 up here, it's really 10 for you guys, is the new ruralism. So, this returns us to Dr. Chris Mulder, who's been obviously a mentor of mine. This is the project that I'm going to go work on here once I leave. But the new ruralism obviously takes a cue from the new urbanism. What Dr. Mulder and his team have done so far in the first 2 phases of this project are take classical agrarian forms, the hub and spoke pattern of the villages and the hamlets that most agricultural societies are based on. And they've applied modern technology, modern engineering, and modern sensibilities to the project. And so, for years and years, we have sought after this idea of the American pastoral. I mean, from Ebenezer Howard and the Garden Cities to the hippie communes of the 70s, right? We all want to get back to the land. Most of us get out on our kayaks or something like that, or go hike a trail on the weekends. It's something that we yearn for. And so what's really unique about this project, many developers have instituted pocket parks or community gardens and things like that, and those are all great. What's interesting about this project, what sets it apart, is that it is a true agrarian community. You've got multiple hubs of primarily residential spaces, but every one of those residents, including the local visitors and the local township of Thornhill, have got access to small-scale agriculture like hobby gardening, totally self-sufficient farming for your family. There's even an industrial dairy operation that's going on there. And this community, using that go-go, slow-go, no-go criteria that we talked about earlier, it's laid out to maximize that land. So they're marching forward towards this idea of a modern agrarian society. Not that it's for everybody, but it is kind of the more underserved area of the rural to urban transect. And so I hope you guys will all come and check it out once it's all done. The last thing I'm going to say is I just want to leave y'all with this quote from Buckminster Fuller. This guy, this man is a genius, obviously. Most of you are probably familiar with him and don't even know it. I first encountered him when I was looking for, Mickey Mouse with my parents when I was 3. And, the geodesic dome, Spaceship Earth and Epcot. All right, that was Buckminster Fuller. This quote in particular, and maybe it's because I just tend to be a free marketeer, but this quote in particular has always meant something specific to me when it comes to land development. And that is that, we can't force people to build the world in our image or in the image that we want to see it in. All we can do is try and lead by example and try and build the world as we see it and hope that others are compelled to follow. And so that's your challenge as you guys step into the arena in 2020 and beyond. Plant your feet, square your hips, put up your fists, and give it hell. Thank you.
Howdy. I'm Riddhi Doshi, and I have the honor of closing this part of the conference and following up on these 8 very influential speakers today. No pressure there. So for the next 15 minutes, I will be speaking to you about my experiences as the youngest and probably the greenest speaker in this room. 15 minutes. You know, I was telling my brother the other day, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to speak for 15 minutes on that stage. He says, we've been on this call for 42 minutes, and you've let me speak for 2. So I think you'll be fine. I mean, that's what passes for pep talk in our family. So anyway, so when Professor Booth told me about this conference and offered me the opportunity to come speak here, I thought long and hard about what I could talk about that would bring value to this conference, that would be meaningful to this conversation we're having today. I think I finally narrowed it down to 3 most important and somewhat interconnected ideas that were unique to me and my experiences here and my journey here. So first, a little bit about me. As Professor Booth mentioned, I graduated with a Bachelor's of Architecture from Bombay, India, about 5 years ago. When I graduated, my father gave me the equivalent of about American $15,000. I think it was more like get out of my house money, but he said, you know, use this wisely, invest in your future, invest in a business, start your life, don't spend it all on shoes. So at the time, I was working as a junior architect with a residential home developer, or a home developer in Bombay. And I kept on having this overwhelming feeling that I was missing several crucial pieces of the puzzle, like I wasn't seeing the whole picture clearly. You know that feeling? So my education in architecture had given me a fair sense of design and construction and the development aspect, but I realized that I lacked this overall understanding of the many moving parts of real estate. Which brings me to my first point, which he alluded to quite a bit, diversifying myself. I think I knew at that point what I wanted to do with my graduation gift. And long story short, that's how I ended up in College Station, Texas, to pursue my master's in land and property development at Texas A&M. For those of you that are enrolled in the program, you know how just how broad this program is in so many ways, which is the biggest reason why I chose this program over many others that I'd considered at the point. Throughout my professional and my personal life, I have tried my best to learn and appreciate this idea of diversity, be it in my personal experiences, my life skills, my education, my experience of people and cultures, my portfolio of investments. This has always been the central theme of my life, diversity. I feel like it's a fair observation that in order to understand something, you need to familiarize yourself with it. In my 4 short years of working, I've had the opportunity to work with an architect, a developer, an investment firm, a broker, and now I've landed in capital markets. Every step I took, every job opportunity, every interview that I took, I think what stood out most about me was that I wanted and I continue to want this broader understanding of real estate and the world around me. So when I first interviewed for my first full-time job in Houston as an acquisitions analyst, they were undertaking their very first industrial development project at the time, and they needed someone who could play this dual role between being their financial analyst, their acquisitions person, but also assisting the project manager and the only one-person development team we had at the point. And that's how I landed my first job. And one of the biggest reasons I got hired for my current position with Avison Young in the capital markets team was because I came from working on the acquisitions side, so I understood the psychology of a buyer, which I think they really appreciated as we took our investments to market and pitched it to these same people that I was working for. But as Professor Booth said, it wasn't always smooth sailing for me. I'm sure it's not easy for all of y'all sitting in this room. You have your own unique challenges as you step out into the professional world, which brings me to my second point, which was my biggest challenge And Mr. Owens talked about how you turn your challenge into an opportunity, so I'll speak a little bit about that. But my biggest challenge was being an outsider in the Texas real estate business. I don't exactly fit in, and the real estate business is very interconnected. The business community is very close-knit. So when I stepped off the plane about 4 years ago, a few international brokerage firms aside, I didn't really even so much as know the names of local real estate companies in the United States, or in Texas for that matter. So this is a true story. It's funny. When I first started looking for jobs in Texas, right out of school, every time my husband and I would drive somewhere and I'd see those new development coming soon, or for sale, or for lease sign, I'd write down the name of the company, and then I'd go home and I'd research about it, and I'll make a note of where I saw it. So then if I did interview with them, I'd be able to bring up that particular project and sort of, let them know that I'm trying to learn, that I'm trying to familiarize myself with Texas. Sorry. So, I had a few more logistical challenges, but we won't talk about that just now. I think the biggest hurdle was getting my foot in the door as a complete stranger and convincing future employers that even though I wasn't from here and could barely point out places in Texas on a map, I could be a valuable asset to an industry where location was everything. And of course, I had a lot of help from my peers, from our very own Professor Booth here, who helped me make introductions to everyone in the business who would walk through the doors of Langford. So towards the end of my program, Professor Booth made an introduction with Caldwell Companies here, and I worked with Clint Cooper in College Station. And I can't begin to describe the opportunities that role opened up for me. So Clint would take me to every meeting, seminar, every networking event, every meeting he could take me to, just to sit there, observe, be a learner. He would also, in my free time, he'd have me read market reports about Houston, Austin, Texas, College Station, and he also introduced me to my very first employer. Such a cliche, but you really leave an impression on people through your work. In my first 2 years in Texas, my professional network and my understanding of Texas has grown quite a bit. I didn't, and I still don't nearly know enough. I've been parts of conversations where I may have nothing substantial to add, where I've sat in so many meetings, completely clueless about what's being discussed until I finally have caught up over time. I've been in a room full of strangers, which can be so daunting, until I started recognizing familiar faces. I suppose if you had to take away anything from my somewhat limited experience, here I'd say don't shy away from a conversation. If you have nothing to say, just listen, take diligent mental notes. I guess that's what today's conference is about, active listening. But as I talk about being an outsider and not fitting in, that wasn't always a bad thing, which brings me to my third and final point as I conclude, where I think the world around me is headed. And this is just one woman's observation, so take it as you may. I think the real estate market is slowly becoming a very global place. Specifically I can talk about capital markets, where you would typically expect your local Houston investor or a local Texas buyer, someone who knows the ins and outs of the market, someone who knows the history of the market, someone who even knows or has connections in the industry. I've noticed that we've generated more and more interest from outside of Texas, from all over the United States, from all over the world. People from California or people from the East Coast who are looking for better cap rates are coming to Texas. I think about only 30% of our campaigns are being looked at by local Texas investors. The other 70% is coming from the United States and even outside. Because our company has a very global presence in Europe, in Asia, we had a lot of interest from South America, from Canada, from Asia, from the Middle East, from Europe. And with all of these different investors and their different backgrounds, There's different methodologies, different expectations from each buyer, different professional attitudes, and different ways of conducting business. And the more opportunities that I get to interact with all of these different people, the more insight I gain into their way of thinking, which makes me a better salesperson. I think my current employer, my current team recognized this trend as they were tracking it for the past few years. And so when they wanted to add someone to their team, they wanted someone who had a more diverse experience and a rather global perspective or a different background from what you would expect from your perfect analyst here in Texas. So at my job interview, after they had qualified me, we spoke for about 2 hours about where I'd been, where I was from, what languages I spoke, what my heritage was, about my travels. We spoke, I mean, you can imagine it wasn't a typical interview. But again, what stood out was that I had a somewhat global perspective, and I respected and I enjoyed learning about other people and the world around me. The way I see it, being at Texas A&M, being at this program gives all of you such an incredible opportunity to be able to truly diversify and interact with a broad spectrum of people and learn a lot of life skills and a lot of core competencies. This university is a truly international hub of people from all over the world, and these people have truly unique perspectives. You'll be able to interact with them, you'll be able to interact with different skill sets and different professional experiences. I'm sure as y'all are working on your capstone project, you've started seeing the value in that interaction with your peers and the value in collaboration with different, I lost my word. Anyway, I think it's time I wrap up my piece now. As Jonathan said, the people we are today is a sum of our environment, our experiences, and the people in it. I found great strength in my roots and where I come from, but I've also greatly benefited from being here in this new environment. So I'll leave you with that, and thank you for your time and your attention, and I hope to see you out in the world.
Okay, so we've got a few things left to do, so let me move through these relatively rapidly. If you've got any questions for our speakers, email me at gbooth@tamu.edu or text me at 979-393-8111. But if you do that, then give me your name so I can pass it on to the speaker so they can get back to you. Now, before Dean Venegas leaves, he's still part of this program, so he might like to curl his heels just for 2 ticks of shakes of a lamb's tail. Is Dean Jones in the room? All right, okay. 5 minutes, Jorge, and then we'll get to you. Right, so here's the situation. We got, in any of these sorts of events, you say thank you to people. That's the most critical thing you do. People invest in you, you've actually got to say thank you. So I'm going to ask a few people to actually come to the stage. I'm going to ask our younger team to basically get up and show respect for our statesman. I'm going to ask Fred to resume his original spot, and I'm going to ask Tom to resume his original spot. I'm going to ask our 3 CEOs to come up. So, Peter, where are you over there? Peter, your wife's name is Wendy? Pardon me? What's your wife's name? Deb. Deb, if you'd like to come down to the stage. Susan, if you'd like to come up to the stage as well. Stand behind the old statesman here. Set yourselves up because you're going to have your photos taken, right? So you can. Fred, you need to sit. It's a chair. See that chair there, Fred? What, you're going to take over again?
I have something. Here, we got a little audible here.
Hold on, this other thing's going to happen first.
No, I got something else. So,
Fred, would you like to say something?
yeah, I want to say something. So, hey, for all of you, Jeffrey Booth has done a phenomenal job in leading the MOPD program, setting this forum up now. This is number 5. I hope this continues, Dean. Where's Dean? Dean, I hope we can continue these things. When I was a student here, how I would have loved to have heard people that were in the industry that could have given me ideas about what a career path really looked like, because I had no clue. So I'm so thankful we are. And so really on behalf of Jonathan, Peter, Brad, who couldn't be here, E, and really the entire group here, we've got something for you. And on behalf of the Caldwell and the Midway teams, we have endowed a scholarship in your name for the School of Architecture that will go to the benefit of students in the MLPD program for criteria that you suggest. And
Oh, look at that.
Larry was nice enough to put this together for you, and just something as a reminder, Jeffrey, of the great admiration we have for you and the thankfulness that we have for you.
Yeah, that's enough, okay? Yeah, we're good, okay. I mean, that's a bit of a shock. Whoa, that's a bit heavy, dude, bit heavy. Righto, so a couple of other people I got to invite down to the stage. That is Robert's mum and dad. You need to come and join us out here because we wouldn't have Robert without you, so you've got to come and...
I didn't know this was going to happen.
Right. And then there's two other people, don't know who they are when I mention their names, David and Jackie. David's from Talus Group, so is Jackie. Where are you? We're sitting out there. You need to come down and join the stage as well, because we keep expanding the family here. And David and Jackie from Talus Group, the students in our Introduction to Land Development class are going to spend the balance of the semester actually looking at Windsong Ranch, which is, as you call, an extraordinary project, David, and it is. And we're going to do something completely different. They've disclosed all their documents basically from inception of the project to occupation of the houses. So the students are going to get access to all the information of how a project comes together. They've signed the confidentiality agreements. They're going to get to see how all these pieces actually fit together in a project. And so we're building on all the work that we've done to date. And we sincerely thank you for what you've done so far. Now, shortly, I have to invite up my new mate, because you make mates here all the time. This is Travis, right? And Travis is going to present some gifts to our speakers. Before I call him up here, I've got to come clean, right? Because, as I say, you've got to say thank you. But as you probably know, higher education gets squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. So you have to run things on the smell of an oily rag. And so we always used to give Australian wine. Well, Australian wine's getting a bit too expensive these days. So the other day we were in Aldi, because as you can see, I'm getting close to retirement age, and so we got to cut our grocery budget. So we went to Aldi, and there was this wine that was in Aldi, and this is what it looks like, right? It's called Winking Owl. Now, Australian, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, immediately appealing. Never buy anything on the label, right? But not bad. I'm going to stop here. There's one other Australian that's going to join us, that is Ross Elliott. Ross, why don't you come down and join us on the stage? Ross was the past Chief Operating Officer of the Property Council of Australia. He's now the chair of the Lord Mayor's Suburban Development Task Force in Brisbane. He's been a good mate of mine for 25 years. He's younger than I am, but he's been a mentor as well. Mate, thank you for everything. He is actually going to be talking to you, those of you that are lucky enough to be joining us for lunch. And for those that aren't, he'll be talking in Langford on Monday night at 6 p.m. in the Adams presentation room. You're all very welcome to actually come and hear him speak on the future of real estate development. Is it urban or is it suburban? And there's very few people in the world that are as well versed as he to speak on that. So back to Aldi now, right? And this is when the Australian comes out again. This wine here is there for $3.69, right? So I say to my wife, I'm looking for gifts. She said, Jeffrey, don't do it. I mean, you just don't want to do this, Jeffrey. And I said, well, why don't we just buy one and we'll see if it's any good for, you know, pasta or cooking wine. So we bought one and we used it in the pasta, and the pasta was pretty good because my wife cooked it. Probably, Riddhi, your husband's a better cook, seeing he's Italian, but anyhow, we'll leave it there. And so there was still some left in the bottle, so I poured it into a glass, 2 glasses, because I'm not greedy, I don't drink it all myself. And we drink this stuff, and it is better than the Australian wine that we've been drinking. So we've figured out that there must be this vineyard in California that they're dumping this wine, you know, and putting it in this fancy bottle. So I bought everybody a bottle of this stuff, and that's what's going to be in the bag. So the trick is this, right? Will they drink it or will they cook it, you know? But anyhow, it is what it is. I came clean so that when I get into bed with my wife tonight, I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say, darling, I came clean, all right? And so that's the story. All right, so Travis Cottle. We have an organisation called the Real Estate Development Association. When I came here, it was completely moribund. And this brings me to the last person I'm going to ask to come to the stage. That's Mike Miller. So Mike, will you please get up and come down? When I came here, Mike was one of the first students that I met. We talked about what the Real Estate Development Association was and could be. And he said, I agree with you, Jeff. I think we can, because we always run on first name basis where I come from. Eli Jones, not so comfortable. The other day I had a meeting with him and I said, what do you want me to call you, Dr. Jones or Eli? And he started to say Dr. Jones. I took my Kubra hat off. I said, if it's going to be Dr. Jones, mate, you've got to choose which Indiana Jones film you're going to star in. Is it going to be Temple of Doom or The Last Crusade? And he said, you can call me Eli. So interesting story. But anyhow, Michael said to me, we can do much better with this reader thing. And if you probably saw the reader thing, is the icon here is the logo. It was basically Michael was the one that put that together, and we started the speakers program, we started the tours, we started all the things that Reader started, and that's entirely to Michael's credit. Now, there's been many presidents of Reader over time. Julio, who's just, why don't you come up and join us as well? Julio was on the team. He was the president of Reader, just finished. He basically continued the traditions. You can get in there, mate. He continued the traditions, and then he handed off the organisation to Travis Cottle. Now, Travis had been in my class, not last semester, the semester before. He comes from a really interesting background. He's a musician, right? And he's been an event planner, and he's been a coach. And he really stood out in the class. And he basically took those folk in Reader and he said, okay, you lot, we're going to get active in this, we're going to get engaged. So I made him the Reader ambassador, right? So he was the Reader ambassador in the program. And he basically got everybody to come to all the events. And at the end of it, he basically stood for president and he became the president of the organisation. Now we've got another ambassador. Why don't you stand up there, mate? There's ambassador. He's the ambassador in the undergraduate class, right? So basically Travis is going to give him a big hand to basically push this along. But Travis, I'll tell you one thing about Travis which has never struck me ever before with a student. I briefed him on what had to be done today in terms of the gifts. And the first thing he said to me, Jeff, how many bottles of wine do I have to buy? How many bottles of wine do I have to buy, right? Usually it's, okay, Jeffrey, what are you going to do for me, right? And I thought, what an interesting thing to actually come across someone so young that actually thought about these sorts of things, thought about why it was important, and actually was considerate enough to say, what is it that I'm going to buy? So Travis, whatever you want, mate, it is yours, right? You can have the cheap bottle of wine first, right? And you can present it to everybody else, but congratulations.
Appreciate it.
You're a real person. You can do it.
All right, I will make this short and sweet so everyone can go eat lunch, have a good time. But first of all, can I get a round of applause for everyone here on stage? Now, we have some legends in front of us, but also we have some legends right here. Now, I know a big phrase with Aggies is Aggies commit. And one thing that you need to know is that everybody in this audience, regardless if they're alumni, current student, we commit. And we want you to know that your return on investment is this right here. And for Professor Booth, for you to be doing this kind of work, to give this kind of information, this suggestion, this experience, we want to say thank you to you again. But all in all, this is a great honor. I'm so happy to be up here with amazing people, but let alone the amazing people that are in this audience. Now, before we go any further, gotta say thank you to a bloke who's right behind me. He won't take enough credit for you. He'll tell you to stop clapping and he'll tell me to get off the stage about 5 minutes ago. But Professor Booth has told me this could be possibly his last conference, which is a sad thing to think about. But there's one thing I do want to assure you. And going back to what Peter said with I can assure you that I will do everything in my power to make sure that something like this is possible for all students moving forward. I will make sure it is something that we can do as a collective. But then again, if it weren't for the likes of Professor Booth, none of us would have this influence and definitely wouldn't have an understanding of Q&B. But at this time, if I can have everybody stand and please applaud in thanking Professor Booth for this awesome opportunity. Now that I got them all choked up, it's time to give some gifts. Now at this time, I have a few individuals that have some gifts. Fellas, if you wouldn't mind coming on up to the stage. And on behalf of everybody from Riddhi and in the MLPD program and the Masters of Real Estate program, we would like to say thank you again for everything that you have said today. And we really do appreciate everything that you've done currently and in the future. Thank you again.
So once you give the gifts, you need to join the team here for the group photo, right? So you're going to be filmed, and then John's here, the excellent photographer from the College of Architecture. He's going to take your group photo for what the Riddhi homepage and whatever else is going to be used. How do you want to set them up, John? Now, to be fair to Dean Venegas, there's been no Q&A, right? I've asked you to actually send your email to me, and I will send it to whoever you is. But there is one person that must be given the right to ask a question, and that is Dean Venegas. And if Indiana Jones had been here, I would have given him the opportunity as well too, right? So Dean Venegas, once the photos are taken, if you would come to the front here and take your place at the rostrum, you've got the right to ask any question of any member of the panel. You do not have the right to ask me any questions because I've already taken the fifth, but you can come and ask the rest of them, any of them, the questions you want to make. Now, after Dean Venegas asks his question, he will close the conference. And those of you that accepted the invitation to lunch, the RSVP to lunch, we will be meeting at 12:30 over in the George H.W. Bush Presidential Dining Room. There's one stipulation. If you didn't accept for lunch and you want to attend, the only way you'll get in is through Anna. Where's Anna? Anna's standing up the back there. If there's any spare spaces, then Anna will decide who gets in and who doesn't, right? Now, once you get in there to have lunch, there's a couple of rules. Rule number one is, if you're a muckety-muck, like some of these people on the stage here, don't sit with other muckety-mucks, right? You've got to sit with students. So if I find people clustering together, you know, that look like me, or old and grey hair, or the young ones gathering together, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to come and tap you on the shoulder and say, get up out of there and go and sit over there, right? So you can either run the gauntlet with me, or you can basically show a bit of responsibility and do it properly. I think there's 8 tables. I'd like to see a mix of people around the tables. It's part of the networking exercise that we're training students to do, and the interaction. It's really important for you to understand that these are people. You cut their wrists, they bleed like anybody else. And you will come across people in your life that they'll cut their wrists and they don't bleed. My advice to you is run, they're aliens, right? You want to get away from it as fast as possible, all right? So, without further ado, we've taken all the photographs. So, Dean Venegas, would you, what? No, you haven't?
Can we change the slide?
Oh. Yeah, well, he's leaving the money on the fridge, right? Okay. How's that? Is that better, John?
That was smart, man.
You good? Righto. So please welcome Dean. No, you're not standing there, mate. You're coming out here. Come on. Yeah, no shrinking violet and you. We're not having that.
Howdy. I'll be brief because I am standing between you and lunch. So, this is a very serious question, and you can take as long as you want to answer it. We had, in our celebration of 50 years of the founding of the College of Architecture at Texas A&M, a very inspiring speech by Henry Cisneros, which was making reference to the Texas Triangle as a very important part of the future of Texas. And when he was listing all the disciplines that our college has, and I can do that, but this is not an infomercial for the college, one thing does strike as a very important element, and I think that you all addressed it in your comments today. It's about change, because we cannot repeat what we have been doing. It's about opportunity in face of things all the way from climate change to anything you want. It's about livability, because we're going to need to put people back and forth. And I think that that's what you stand for based on the work that your companies do. So my question is actually quite simple. If the College of Architecture, with the support of Texas A&M University as a whole, within the Texas A&M system, and the full capacity that it has to honor its commitment to the people of the state of Texas through its land grant, sea grant, and space grant institution, can you tell me what one wish you would do if you have the genie in the bottle coming up and saying, I'll grant you any wish for us to be seen as the leaders that I know we are, but not many people know, people like you know. But what would you wish for this land and property and real estate development unit to be as the leader in the future of Texas, and actually as an exemplar for the world? I didn't warn you that my questions are kind of complicated.
Well, I have an answer to you. I appreciate you asking that question. And as I think about that question, I think about that book that many of us actually, I think, have thought about referencing that Collins wrote, Good to Great. And in that book, he says, if you settle for good, you'll never be great. And so I think the direction that you're heading and the direction that we all have at A&M is to be measured as great at what we do. So I think the opportunity that College of Architecture has, the MLPD program has, and the MARE program has, is to be best, not only in the United States, not Texas, but in the world. I think it's a relatively short putt in golfing parlance, but in business, a relatively achievable goal for you and for your team to have the world's best real estate education at Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. I think that's an achievable, probable goal for you and your team.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in? Tom?
I would say it's going to be the people that are going to make the Golden Triangle what it is. Continue to produce leaders, people that value others. And we'll be different. Harvard won't be Harvard because they focused on themselves rather than the people coming.
And I think that that's a very fitting ending, because I think that one thing that we're doing, and I just want to remind everybody, rolls their eyes when I keep on saying, the vision of the College of Architecture, in a very succinct way, it's about providing through everything we do in our college, in any of the departments, 16 academic programs and everything that we have, it's the highest quality of life for people, the highest quality of place where people are, whether it's natural, built, virtual, and the intersection of all three, which is social. And what we do is not brick and mortar, it's not things, it's not commodities, it's enabling the full range of human endeavors at the highest quality. And that's why we are at Texas A&M. Thank you. Oh, and I get the honor of saying, conference adjourned. Another success.